Good morning and welcome to Rising Fridays. We got a great show for you today on this lovely Friday. Ryan, you are still in the Vermont Bureau of Rising Fridays, but about to come back here to the swamp in a few days, so that'll be exciting.
Unfortunately, yes, I'll be back in DC next week. The nice part will be I'll be back in the studio. Looking forward to that. And we will probably still be talking about this raid in Mar-a-Lago. So today, this is what we led the show with last Friday. It's what we're going to lead the show with this Friday, probably next Friday. But because this is unspooling, quite slowly, and so today, a federal judge is saying, like, look, it's fine if you want to release. I'm going to allow the release of this affidavit that backed up the search warrant, but I'm going to allow the DOJ to make recommendations for redactions, and they're going to have to explain all of their requests for redactions.
Right. And I think what's important what you said in that this is moving really slowly, because at this time last week, I remember when we led the show with this last Friday, we were very clear that things could change over the course of the day, because that's what really we were expecting. Things seemed to be moving much more quickly. This idea that information was going to be released either by Trump's camp, by the FBI, was moving really quickly. It seemed much more fluid than it has over the course of the last week. Now, the unsealed Mar-a-Lago search warrant application cover sheet offers the DOJ's description of potential crimes. So this much we do know at this point, which include willful retention of national defense information, concealment or removal of government records, obstruction of federal investigation. Okay, Ryan, I'm really curious to know what you make of those potential charges. I don't know if that's exhaustive. I imagine there probably are other things, but when you're looking at that first one that I read, national security information, this is a problem that a lot of people have with the laws surrounding national security information. And if you're listening to this via podcast, I just did air quotes around national security information because it's a broad category. What do you make of those potential charges laid out from that front page of the document?
None of those charges are overthrowing the government or attempting to overthrow the government. And so just right, or none of those charges that we know of are trying to sell nuclear secrets to the Saudis for $2 billion in bribe money. Mm-hmm. Now, potentially something along those lines could actually be embedded within these concealment of documents if they also have some motivation, some evidence of motivation to then profit off of those documents in a way that would undermine national security, which leaking nuclear information to the Saudis quite clearly would. But short of that, you have mostly paperwork crimes. Because since the president could have declassified anything that he took before he took it, so then the fight would be, well, did he go through the process of declassifying it? And that's just not a winning kind of turf for Democrats to be fighting on when they have such a better argument that they could be trying to make that the guy orchestrated an attempted coup. Like that is where Democrats are strongest. And you saw the public's attitude toward Trump and toward what happened on January 6th and toward the entire Stop the Steal thing, eroding, in a significant way throughout the highly produced January 6th investigations / committee hearings, that they were rolling out episodically, some of them in prime time. And for it to then lead up to paperwork charges about, was he allowed to take these records? Did he keep them too long? Did he say that he was returning them but not keep them? Is sort of anticlimactic given what they were building up to. And now the judge has given the DOJ until Thursday to recommend and explain the redactions that it wants in this affidavit. Who knows how long the judge will take to make a decision after that? So we're pushing into Labor Day and beyond with this still just dribbling out.
Right, and I think, of course, that's what that's what the opposition to Donald Trump sort of politically sees as advantageous to them, because it's a midterm season, and the more that they can make Donald Trump the issue in midterm elections, for the reasons you just said, Ryan, like it's actually not super. The way Donald Trump handled the election and January 6th, not super popular. So to the extent that they can keep it in the news cycle and force Republican candidates to talk about it going into the fall, I think that's certainly seen as politically advantageous. I wanted to ask you about the Espionage Act, and what we just when we read those bullet points just now, and the one about national security information, these are intentionally legally broad categories, and they have been wielded in really unfortunate ways, including by Donald Trump's administration itself. And you guys at The Intercept have had experience reporting and living through this, actually. In fact, what do you make of the way that these documents that were at Mar-a-Lago, you have this 9-hour raid, 30 agents. What do you make of the way that they're being approached legally by the intelligence community under that sort of broad category?
Well, it's wild because the Espionage Act, as it's currently kind of implemented in our country, it just does not belong. And we've talked about this before on the show. It does not belong in a free society. Now, if you want to have an Espionage Act that targets foreign espionage, on our soil, then by all means, every country, has laws and methods that target foreign spies, like going back hundreds and hundreds of years. It predates even kind of democracy itself. That's a normal thing. You don't want foreign spies stealing your info. You don't want them putting moles in the government. You don't want them kind of bribing your king or your queen. Fine, we get that, but that's not what this Espionage Act is about. And it started creeping out and started being applied to whistleblowers like Daniel Ellsberg, who was absolutely not a spy. He's not involved in espionage. You can say that he improperly leaked classified information if you want, or you can say illegally or whatever. But there are mechanisms within kind of the government bureaucracy. Okay, you do that, you lose your security clearance. The security clearance is created by this unaccountable executive branch. Then it can be enforced by this unaccountable executive branch, but only within the confines of that branch. So it means you're fired or you're demoted or you can't work for the CIA in the future. But putting people in prison as a result of it stretched the bounds of what the Espionage Act had been. Then they start applying it to publishers. With WikiLeaks and Julian Assange are now getting applied the Espionage Act. He's not even in the United States. He's been in the United States for like less than a week. So how he could possibly be a spy on foreign soil doesn't make any sense either. Now to expand it to apply it to a president, really stretches it to an absurd degree. And a lot of civil liberties advocates, both on the left and the right, have been saying for decades that the Espionage Act needs to be reformed and actually needs to be gutted. Rashida Tlaib has a great bill to reform it. Repealing it would be even better. So I hope that people are finally waking up to the broad dangers that this act represents. Are you seeing, people like Rand Paul have always been good on this on the right. Are you seeing more people on the right start to say, actually this law does need a closer look, or is it more case by case, or saying, well, this is a bad application of this law to this particular president?
No, I've definitely seen a lot more people, and it's similar to the way that the FBI is approached now, which is surprising. I think we talked last week about that back and forth between Steve Doocy on Fox and Friends and Steve Scalise, where he was saying to Steve Scalise, what happened to back the blue? But I do think there's been a wake up, and I feel like we've talked about this a lot here to the intelligence community more broadly, is their abuse of their powers. But on that note, I do think that is a really good point, because it's like the way the way this entire apparatus has been wielded. Actually, this is a good example in the prompter. According to Real Clear Investigations, the FBI division of overseeing the investigation of Trump's handling of classified material at his Mar-a-Lago residence is also a focus of Special Counsel John Durham's investigation of the Bureau's alleged abuses of power and political bias during its years-long RUSSIAGATE probe of Trump. Okay, so that is similar along these veins of, like, are people on the right waking up to the abuse of power power at the FBI, the abuse of power in the intelligence community, wielding the Espionage Act in a way that silences whistleblowers. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's completely true, but it's also been so politicized to the point where a lot of those centrist Democrats who may have been favorable, probably wouldn't have been super favorable, but may have at least had open minds to talk to Rashida Tlaib about reforming the Espionage Act. Now, because they realized they could use it against Donald Trump, and because it has become part of this war on Donald Trump and the political establishment's war on Donald Trump, they will not want to hear anything about that in the future, because this is what it was. I mean, so if anything, I think it's made the Espionage Act almost stronger, because the establishment has discovered, not just, this isn't just the intelligence community realizing it now, it's the political establishment discovering how powerful this can be to take exceptional steps in what they perceive as exceptional circumstances.
I think that's right, and I think it's unfortunate, and it also goes to show the way that that Department of Justice and other federal investigations can have consequences and outcomes without actually leading to even charges or convictions. And that's something that anybody who's been in the crosshairs of prosecutors and investigators, has known for a very long time. Tons of people, for instance, in the Clinton administration, were bankrupted by the Ken Starr investigation, who were never charged with anything, never even effectively accused of anything, but just ended up spending years of their lives in locked in legal battles with this special prosecutor. And so if federal investigators start finding that they can just launch investigations of politicians and then have them drag out for a very long time and then not lead anywhere, that is deeply troubling, because that's a significantly unchecked power that you're giving to them, which is why it's so important, I think, that they move much more quickly and start to tell the American people, what they're actually up to and what their end game is here. To have the lead prosecutor say in this most recent filing that the investigation is in the early stages should be troubling to a lot of people. You would not think that a former president ought to be rated in the early stages of an investigation unless there was some imminent harm that was coming to the country. And if there was, you have to demonstrate that to the public. You cannot just assert it. We need to see the information that backs up this this kind of unprecedented move.
Well, and from what we understand, it's likely they knew these boxes were sitting at Mar-a-Lago for months and months and months and months. And so to start the early stages of an investigation right in August, heading into the midterm year fall, and say that it's suddenly an urgent matter of national security is extremely hard to believe from a very politicized FBI. Just as we were talking about there, this is one of the probes of the Durham investigation, or part of the probe of the Durham investigation is focused on this part of the FBI, and we don't even need the Durham investigation to know that the FBI has been highly politicized in an anti-Trump direction. It's been politicized for years, of course, but particularly in this case against Donald Trump. So where we may have in the past, and in a healthy country, given the benefit of the doubt to a major arm of our law enforcement like the FBI, if that's, in a healthy country, sure, that should be our reflex. Maybe we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. In this case, they have, I think, completely lost all ability to have the benefit of the doubt from the public, certainly from the media, even though these figures have been all over the media in the course of the last week. Matt Taibbi had a great piece about Michael Hayden and Andrew McCabe and all of these admitted liars who are basically being trotted out by the corporate media right now to boost the image of the FBI. I don't think people are necessarily voting on this in the fall. I don't think that's the case, but I do think it keeps this Trump news in the news cycle. I mean, it keeps this idea. It's sort of like what the Russia investigation did initially. There was this steady drip, drip, drip every single night of the one thing that was going to end him. This was going to be it, and that was really damaging, I think, to public opinion and to Republicans' ability to legislate.
Yeah, at least with the Russia investigation, though, we knew where they were trying to head. They were trying to find evidence that somebody close to Putin, had directly colluded with somebody close to Trump in order to, help Trump win the presidency. So that was at least we knew what their North Star was. This, we're not even sure here. We're we're told there's some top secret stuff, very dangerous, very important. What he was going to do with it, we don't know. How it got there, we don't exactly know. Whether he still knew it was it like we don't even know what they're trying to prove yet. So we're really in the dark here. And like you said, we're less than 90 days from a midterm election.
Right. And, you know, the one thing we can probably agree on as we close out the segment is that it's been so poorly handled. Like the legitimate, I think, grievances against Donald Trump, which, listen, I'm a conservative, but hardly like reflexively defensive of the corruption in his administration, which absolutely existed, and the problems with his presidency, which absolutely existed, whether it was the rhetoric about the election, whether it was January 6th. But the way that Democrats and his opposition have handled it have not been constructive at all whatsoever. And it's sort of like from this insular idea about what is politically expedient to them. And like this is always going to be the thing that takes them down. They're always convinced they found the thing that's going to end Donald Trump. And instead, it's just these fishing expeditions that do end up keeping the drip, drip, drip in the news. But they definitely don't get the public any closer to the truth that it deserves or needs.
Yeah, no, we'll see, and we'll probably be back here next Friday with more drip drip on this after the judge has received the redaction request from the DOJ. For now, I guess we can drip over to the next segment, and we'll have more rising right after this.
We're going to drip on over to the radars. We'll tell you what's on our radars right after this.